And Michael's tried to pick him up and then it just flopped in Michael's arm, so Michael's laid him on the floor.
Michael and Kerry Ives responded to initial police questions with a series of lies to cover up the horrific state of their grandson.
And then it was fine all day because we took him shopping with us.
Right.
And it was fine, perfect.
Ethan Ives Griffiths was born in Wales on April 27, 2019, to his mother Shannon Ives and his father Will Griffiths. He was said to be a smiley, loving, outgoing, sassy, and boisterous little boy. Ethan loved cuddling and playing outside in the garden. He also had 2 older siblings.
Ethan! Hey.
The boys' parents had a tumultuous relationship, and there had been allegations of DV against Will. He was also accused of being aggressive towards a social worker in June of 2021, which led to his arrest. However, Will has always denied these allegations. Now, after he was arrested in June, Ethan's mother Shannon took him and his siblings and went to live with her sister. Just a few weeks later, due to their apartment being so crowded, Ethan was sent to live with his grandparents, Michael and Kerry Ives, at their home on Kingsley Road in Garden City. Then on July 16th, Shannon joined her son and also moved in with her parents. It was less than a month later, on August 14th, 2021, at 9:20 p.m., that Ethan's grandmother Kerry was calling 911, reporting that he had been watching TV when suddenly he collapsed and fell unresponsive. When paramedics arrived at the home shortly after, they rushed little Ethan to Alder Hey Children's Hospital. Here, it was discovered that he had suffered from a catastrophic brain injury. Not only that, but Ethan was also visibly underweight and dehydrated. He had over 40 injuries on his little body. Nurses, who were clearly and understandably upset by what they saw, said that the 2-year-old had a pot belly, similar to children who are malnourished, and he did not look like a child that was cared for. The day after he'd collapsed, Ethan's father Will was notified by his mother Shannon. She told him that their son had taken a tumble and now he was in the hospital. So at that time, Will believed that Ethan had just taken a fall and he was going to be fine. But as he walked into the hospital, he did not even recognize the toddler, whom he hadn't seen for the last 10 weeks.
I got the chance to hold him while he took his final breath. It was very emotional. I'm glad I got to at least hold him in his final moment. At least he knew in his final moment somebody he loved was actually holding him. We got to the hospital. Obviously I'm in high hopes that he is okay and it's not major. I had to go to the room on my own, unfortunately, and I couldn't believe it was my son. It didn't look like Ethan because he was completely different from head to toe. There was no weight there. There was nothing of him. And then obviously the obvious fact of completely covered in bruises. It was a sight of horror.
The next day, on August 16th, Will and other members of his family had to make the difficult decision to remove Ethan's life support, after being told by doctors there was nothing more they could do. When an autopsy was completed, it was found that Ethan had abdominal injuries which had likely been caused by blows in the days before he'd been taken to the hospital. Other injuries included a chipped tooth, tears to his mouth and lip, which had a large chunk missing, and bruises on his leg, arms, and face, which were consistent with grip marks. He additionally had a serious head injury, which looked to have been caused by deliberate force or shaking, and had to have occurred at the time or in the minutes before he collapsed. Had he not obtained that head injury, medical experts said that he would have died due to dehydration in the next couple of days.
He was standing on the rug there, and then I just took my eyes off him for not even 30 seconds, and he's on the floor, and his head's here, on the rug, like face down on the left side. So then I picked him up, and he's just flopped. So then I've rubbed his face and all that, and then I've rubbed his chest, and I've shouted for his mum, so his mum's come running downstairs, and then he came round.
His granddad turned around and said, "Stop messing about now, lad." And Michael's head was turned for literally 2 seconds, and as he's turned back round, Ethan's gone to fall backwards, but Michael's caught him.
Right, okay.
Because the table was over there, so Michael's gone to catch him, and as Michael's gone to catch him, he's gone on his knees, and then Michael's tried to pick him up, and then he just flopped in Michael's arm, so Michael's laid him on the floor. Michael picked him up and took him outside to see if the fresh air would bring him out, but it never. So Michael put a wet cloth on his lips and on his face, and they kept, come on, like, and it won't have none of it.
Regardless of what Ethan's grandparents were saying, it was clear to detectives that the fatal injury the little boy had sustained was not accidental, and all medical evidence pointed to it being almost instantaneous. Therefore, the boy's grandparents, 46-year-old Michael Ives and 45-year-old Carrie Ives, were placed under arrest, and they were charged with murder, causing or allowing the death of a child, and cruelty to a child. Ethan's mother, 27-year-old Shannon, was also placed under arrest, and she was charged with causing or allowing the death of a child and cruelty to a child. The reason why Shannon wasn't charged with murder like her parents were was because authorities were able to confirm that she had been upstairs when Ethan had fallen down. And the only two people who had been in the room with him were Michael and Carrie. This would leave officers convinced that the two had come up with a pact between themselves to try and hide the truth. Now, Ethan had been on the Child Protection Register at the time of his death, and he had been assigned a social worker named Michael Cornish. He was supposed to see him at least every 10 days. Michael had first visited the family's home on July 22, 2021, and he described Ethan as being small and shy. He then arranged for another visit on August 5th, which is more than 10 days away from July 22nd, so I'm not sure why that's the case. But following a conversation that the caseworker had on the phone with Shannon discussing the family isolating due to COVID, he was only able to speak to the mother on the doorstep of the home, at which time she told him that Ethan was taking a nap. A week later, just 2 days before Ethan was rushed to the hospital, Michael Cornish arranged another visit with the family, but when he arrived, there was no answer at the door. So he tried to call Shannon the following day, but again, he got no answer. After that, he'd gone on leave, but emailed his supervisor to provide him updates on the case, and to let him know that someone needed to check on the children in his absence. On August 13th, a health visitor was scheduled to go out to the home, but Shannon would call and cancel this appointment, saying that she was sick. Come to find out, it was actually because Ethan had collapsed that day too. Yes, an entire day before emergency services were contacted. According to the boy's grandfather, Michael, on the afternoon of August 13th, his mother, Shannon, grabbed him by the arms and yelled at him to stand up, before she then smacked him in the back of the head for misbehaving. Michael claimed he told her not to do that to Ethan, but she didn't reply. He added that his daughter had no patience for her son, and she was rather quick-tempered. Michael stated that after that, Shannon left the room with his grandson, and then he heard a bang, like the little boy had hit his head on the floor. He then saw that Ethan had fallen to the rug, and he was unresponsive for about 5 minutes. When the toddler did come back around, he seemed to pick up, Michael stated. So instead of seeking medical attention for his grandson, he and his wife, Carrie, decided to take him out grocery shopping. Michael claimed this was to keep an eye on him so he wouldn't be alone with his mother. He also told police that he and his wife had asked Shannon if they could bring Ethan to the doctors to get checked out, but she told them no. The grandfather said he did not want to leave the 2-year-old alone with his mother Shannon because of the way she was. The way that she used to smack him up the head or on the back of the legs. He also informed police that on at least one occasion, Shannon had told Ethan that he needed to go fuck off and live in care. Shortly before the toddler's final collapse, Michael said that Shannon took him off into the other room to feed him. And when they returned, Ethan had a red mark near his eye. When Michael asked the mother how he had gotten the injury, she replied that he must have fallen. But he didn't believe her, and he thought that Shannon had to have been the cause of it. The grandfather was adamant that he had nothing to do with Ethan's death or other injuries, and that he was a good granddad. When Ethan's grandmother, Carrie Ives, was questioned by detectives and she was asked how her grandson had sustained his fatal head injury, she said, "I have no idea." She then blamed the bruises on his body due to him being clumsy and a little boy who just walks into things. She said he was very accident prone. She then claimed that her daughter Shannon would sometimes smack Ethan up the head, even though she and Michael had previously told her not to. Carrie said that she had instructed Shannon to have the toddler stand in the corner instead, but she had been told to mind her own business. According to Carrie, her daughter was always on the phone, ignoring Ethan. She had even been on it texting when he was lying on the floor, unresponsive, on August 14th. When Ethan collapsed that day, Carrie said that she screamed for her daughter to come downstairs, but Shannon told her to wait 2 minutes because she was on her phone. Carrie had sworn at her daughter and said, "Never mind 2 minutes, he's your baby." This interaction was discovered to have taken place at 9:02 p.m., yet emergency services had not been called for another 18 minutes. Even though both grandparents had been in the room with Ethan when he had fallen unresponsive, and they claimed they had never laid a hand on him, CCTV cameras outside the family's home uncovered something much different. On August 4th, footage taken in the back garden showed Ethan on a trampoline. He is seen being carried off by his grandfather, Michael, by the top of his arm, which prosecutors would later say was as though Ethan was just a bag of rubbish to be slung out. In the video, Michael is also seen pointing a water hose at his grandson, placing his hands on top of his head, then gesturing for another child to come punch him. On August 12th, Ethan was again seen on CCTV, this time leaving the house for the first time in days. And he was again being carried by his arm by Michael out to the car. Once the little boy was put into the vehicle, Michael is seen hitting his arm out twice in Ethan's direction. The next day, the same day that the little boy collapsed for the first time, video footage shows the grandparents walking back into the house and they're mimicking the way that the 2-year-old walks. Now, according to Ethan's mother, Shannon, she had seen Michael take the little boy into the garden on the evening of August 14th. During that time, the toddler started to cry, so Michael grabbed him by the arms and began shaking him, telling him to shut up. Shannon informed police that she had tried to get her father to stop, but he wouldn't. She also stated that she did not seek any medical help for her son at that time because she was terrified of Michael. And she also thought that she might get the blame for Ethan's injuries. Then, about an hour after this incident had taken place in the garden, Shannon said that Ethan collapsed. She insisted that she had told her mother, Carrie, to call an ambulance immediately. But her parents told her that they were going to wait at least 5 to 10 minutes to see if he came back around, like last time. The mother admitted to police that she should have gotten help for her son sooner, but she was being controlled and manipulated by her parents. She said that the reason why she had canceled health appointments and lied to social workers about the little boy sleeping when they had come to visit was all because of them. When Shannon said that she wanted to take Ethan to see the doctor, Michael and Carrie told her not to. They would threaten her and say that if anyone saw the 2-year-old in that condition, he would be taken away. Shannon additionally denied ever hurting her little boy and said that sometimes she would shout at him or tap him on the hand or bottom, but that was the worst she had ever done. She told detectives that when she had joined her son, living at her parents' house back in July, she noticed that he had gone from chunky to skinny. She even had to start buying him smaller clothes because the ones he owned were falling off his body. However, her parents continued to insist that Ethan had been eating 3 to 4 meals every day. Shannon then began noticing that while her son was eating meals, he would keep looking over at her father, Michael, like he was scared. She even witnessed her father making Ethan stand with his legs open and his hands on his head for 1 to 2 hours at a time. But again, Shannon was too terrified of her parents, mainly her father, to get any help for her son. According to her, the reason why she was so scared of them was because she had been mistreated by her mother and father since she was 4 years old. As she got older, they didn't allow her to have any friends or live a normal life. Shannon claimed that Michael would punch her and her siblings, as well as kick them and use a belt on them too. Her mother, Carrie, wasn't as bad as her father, Michael, but she would still strike Shannon from time to time. The thing is, when Ethan had been brought to the hospital, doctors and nurses noticed that Shannon had tried to blame his many injuries on the little boy just learning to walk. This struck them as rather odd, though, given Ethan's age. They also noted that while the mother was tearful at first, she quickly became detached, asking to go home, then becoming fixated on her phone. Shannon additionally asked nurses if she was going to get in trouble for Ethan's death. The trial for Shannon, Carrie, and Michael wouldn't begin until July of 2025. During this time, Carrie and Michael would continue to try to blame Shannon for Ethan's death, and she would blame them. At the same time, Michael also admitted that he was disgusted with himself for the way that he had treated his grandson. And as the jury watched the video of him carrying Ethan to the car by his arm, he said it was a horrible thing for him to have done. When Carrie testified, she said that when Ethan first started living with them, he was a chubby and bubbly little boy, but he would act differently when his mother was around, biting his lip until it bled, or shoving food into his mouth until he choked. She also said that if Ethan ever laughed at Shannon, she would completely lose her temper. Carrie told the court that she had not been around on August 13th, when Ethan had fallen unresponsive the first time. But if she had been, she would have called an ambulance. The next day, she claimed that Shannon had hit Ethan, but he didn't whine or cry. She then suggested that he had learned not to because bad things were happening to him all the time. In the end, the jury would deliberate for close to 7 hours before Michael and Carrie were both found guilty of murder and child cruelty. Shannon was also found guilty of causing or allowing a child's death and child cruelty. All 3 are scheduled to be sentenced on October 3rd. After the trial, Ethan's father, Will, read a prepared statement outside of court, in which he said in part, "Unfortunately, I did not get that much time with Ethan, but the time I did have will never be forgotten, and he will always live on in our hearts and memories. He will be remembered for the smiley, outgoing, loving child that he was. He can now rest in peace, knowing that justice has been served." A memorial has just recently been started at a local park, located in Garden City Center, for little Ethan.
Pair then took a T31 bus to New Addington, where Hazel lived with her grandmother. Tia was never seen alive again.
You feel that perhaps the people are looking at you?
Well, if they believe what they read in the papers, they can do whatever they like, because I know deep down in my heart that Tia walked out of my house. She walked out of there, and I know damn well, because she was seen walking down the pathway. I know she made that track down to that way. What happened after that is, I don't know.
Tia Sharp was born on June 30th, 2000 in Croydon, London, to her mother, Natalie Sharp, and her father, Stephen Carter. She had 2 younger brothers, and Tia was said to be a vibrant, confident, and funny young girl who was always making jokes and making friends. Tia loved films, music, and singing, and she would often pretend that her BlackBerry was a microphone. Her favorite show was The X Factor, and she wanted to be an actress when she grew up. She was said to be a great student, though she was absent more than her teachers would have liked. Now, Tia's mother, Natalie, was just 18 years old when the little girl was born, and her biological father, Stephen, had disappeared shortly after her birth. So, Natalie's own mother, Christine Bicknell, had helped to raise Tia. Christine knew what it was like to be a young mother, as she herself had given birth to Natalie when she was just 15 years old. For the majority of the time, Tia lived with her mother, Natalie, and her 29-year-old stepfather, who was more like a real father to her, David Niles. He'd been in Tia's life since she was only 4 years old. But Tia would also often spend time at her grandmother Christine's house, who lived 10 miles away. So much time, in fact, that she even had her own room there. When Tia was just 2 years old in 2002, her mother Natalie had began dating a man named Stuart Hazel. He was only 4 years older than her, regardless of his appearance. But this relationship would only last a few weeks. However, Stuart would end up getting with Natalie's mother, Christine, not long after that, who was actually the one who had introduced Stuart and Natalie to begin with. So, just an odd situation. The relationship between Christine and Stuart lasted longer than the one that he had had with Natalie, and after only a week of dating, he would move in with Christine. Stuart quickly became integrated into the family dynamics, and it wasn't long until Tia and her younger brothers started seeing him as a grandfather figure. Now, since Tia's grandmother Christine often worked night shifts, when Tia would spend time over there, Stuart would sometimes be the one watching her, which was also the case on the night of August 2nd, 2012. Christine, Tia's grandmother, was working that evening, so Stuart took the little girl out food shopping, where they were caught on security footage. Following this, they returned back to Stuart and Christine's home, where Stuart made some dinner, played PlayStation with Tia, then sent the girl off to bed for the night. The next day, August 3rd, when Christine returned back home, she noticed that her granddaughter was not there, so she asked Stuart where Tia had gone. Stuart informed her that the girl had gone to Croydon, which was about 5 miles away, to go shopping with a friend for some shoes. However, when Tia still had not returned by 6 p.m. that night, Christine called up her daughter, Natalie, and asked her if she had seen Tia. She had not. So Christine, Stuart, and Natalie all got into a car and began driving around the area to see if the 12-year-old had maybe just stayed out too late playing with a friend and forgotten to call. But that didn't seem to be the case, because they couldn't find her anywhere. Police would then be notified that Tia was missing at 10 p.m., and the search for her began immediately. The next day, Tia's family made an emotional plea for her safe return, as police searched through over 800 hours of CCTV footage. They were trying to see where exactly Tia had gone. However, none of the footage from multiple buses, trams, or shops showed any sign of the 12-year-old. Authorities had also checked the shopping center footage where Tia was said to have gone with her friend. But no Tia. It was as if she had disappeared into thin air. When police began to speak to neighbors of Christine and Stuart, one would tell them that they had seen Tia leaving the house that day. But other than that, there was no further information. Quickly, the search for 12-year-old Tia Sharp became huge news. Her family printed out t-shirts, created posters and banners, plastered with Tia's face to get the word out about her disappearance. Hundreds of people volunteered to help with the search. Yet 4 days went by, and there was still no sign of Tia. Since Stuart was the last person to see the 12-year-old before she had gone shopping, police interrogated him, as well as searched the grandparents' home. While they didn't find much, they did find that Tia's cell phone had been left behind in her bedroom. With this, and the fact that CCTV cameras had not picked up Tia at all that day, police started to become rather suspicious of Stuart. So Stuart, of course, began to feel like not only were the police putting him under a microscope and treating him like a suspect, but the general public also was. As such, he decided to clear his name by going on TV 6 days after Tia's disappearance. And on August 9th, he defended himself as well as begged for the girl's safe return.
Tell me a little bit about Tia's life. I mean, is she a happy girl? Is she jolly? Has she got any problems?
No, she's got no problems at all. She's a happy-go-lucky golden angel. You know what I mean? She's perfect. There's no arguments, no nothing we can think of. Absolutely nothing.
So Tia stays here Thursday night. just with you. Christine's working. Talk me through Friday up until the last time you see her. Tell me exactly what you did.
Tia's come down the stairs around about 10, 11, something like that maybe. Because I know she was on about going up to for about, she wanted to get up early. She picked up your mum's DS up, played the DS for a little while. I said, well, we're going to have some breakfast. So I made her some toast, and she had the toast, and then she wanted a sausage roll, because she's always eating sausage rolls. Basically, and then she was sitting there. She doesn't take her washing up out, so I took her washing up out. Just started doing a little bit of washing up in the kitchen. She was in there. She was telling me what she was doing, but I weren't really logging it into my head. I didn't. Do you know what I mean? Remember, like the kids, they talk to you. It goes in one ear, stays there for a second, and it goes out. You know what I mean? As I was hoovering, then she walked out. She walked past me from the front room to go out, and she walked out the front door. That is all I know. And she left her phone on charge, because I told her to sit there and leave her phone on charge. I didn't mean leave it on charge, because what Tia doing, she plays on the BB thing, but then she uses it as it's charging, so there's no charge going through to it. So when I said to her, just leave your phone on charge, it means leave her phone on charge, not use it, let it charge up a bit, then you can actually take it with you or whatever, because she's been responsible to go to Croydon before. She's been responsible to go on trains and buses and trams and everything before on her own.
So when she walked past you and out to the door, did she say anything?
She said, goodbye. Well, I said, well, make sure you're back at 6. She went, yeah. And that was it, and then the door closed and she walks out. I don't take precise times and things like that, but when she walked out that door, I know damn well it was 12:10. According to my clock, because as I was hoovering up the dog's mess by my kitchen, I look up and I've got a great big clock in front of me on the cooker which says 12:10.
Now listen, you've been living in house arrest,
basically,
almost, for the last 7 days almost now. How's that been?
Oh, it's been horrible. It's been horrible. Do you know what I mean? The family's, we're stuck inside here, do you know what I mean? We've got all the papers outside, all putting accusations down, and they asked me stupid questions yesterday, like, oh, did you do anything? I said, well, no, I didn't. Excuse my language, but no, I didn't. I'd never think of that. I loved her to bits. She's like my own daughter, for God's sake. We had that sort of relationship. It was that sort of thing. It was just, you know, she wanted it, she got it. She's got a loving home. She's never gone without anything, so I can't work it out. What the hell's going on? We're all out there. They want to report the truth.
So do you feel under pressure? Do you feel that perhaps the people are looking at you?
Well, if they believe what they read in the papers, they can do whatever they like. Because I know deep down in my heart that Tia walked out of my house. She walked out there, and I know damn well, because she was seen walking down the pathway. I know she made that track down to that way. What happened after that is I don't know.
Once this interview was over, police would get a body language expert to analyze the footage and see if anything was off with Stuart. And they would conclude that his behavior was inconsistent of that of a concerned family member. He seemed extremely animated and like he was trying to convince somebody of the story that he was telling. While he answered yes to some questions, he was seen shrugging his shoulders at the same time, meaning, I don't know. It seemed like his story was completely rehearsed. Due to this suspicious interview, police decided to search Christine and Stuart's home for a 4th time on August 10th. When they arrived to do their search, Christine informed officers that Stuart had just recently left to go to the shop. And when he had, she began noticing a foul smell, but couldn't find the source of it. The forensics team then followed the smell up to the attic, and to the left side of the loft, there they found Tia's body. Her body had been there for a full week at this point, decomposing 12 feet above her mother, family, reporters, and police. She was wrapped up in a black bedsheet and black trash bin liners, taped tightly to avoid any smell coming out. Due to Tia's body's level of decomposition, her cause of death was unable to be determined, though it's believed that she was suffocated or smothered in some way, likely by a pillow. Once police found Tia's body, they also launched their search for Stuart, as he had still not returned back home from what he had said was supposed to be just a brief trip. However, it wouldn't be until authorities alerted the public that they were looking for Stuart that they received a tip that led to his arrest at Cannon Hill Common at 8:25 p.m. He was found in a park drinking a bottle of vodka, and he was arrested on suspicion of murder. Then, 2 further arrests were also made. Tia's grandmother, Christine Bicknell, was arrested on suspicion of murder, and her and Stewart's neighbor, Paul Meehan, was arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender. Paul was the neighbor who had told police that he had seen Tia leaving the house on the day she disappeared, though it's not known exactly why he lied to authorities. Both he and Christine would end up making their bail shortly after their arrests. For some time following this, Christine was not allowed to be around her own daughter, Natalie, or any of her grandchildren, though it wasn't long after that she would end up being cleared completely of Tia's murder. As police had continued their search of Tia's grandmother's home, they discovered a bag that contained Tia's clothing, as well as another bag up in the attic that contained her broken glasses. Police also found an SD card that had been pushed into the doorframe of the ground floor of the house. It looked like it had been purposely hidden by someone, so police took it with them. Meanwhile, Stewart's questioning was underway, and his version of events had changed completely from what he had previously told authorities. He claimed that while he'd been playing with Tia on the night of August 2nd, she had suddenly fallen down the stairs and broken her neck. However, he was intoxicated on a combination of alcohol and marijuana, so he had passed out moments later. It wasn't until the next morning that he had woken up and discovered Tia laying on the floor, dead. According to Stewart, he had been so upset and so ashamed that he had let this happen to Tia while he was intoxicated that he could not build up the strength to tell Natalie and Christine what had happened under his supervision. So instead, he decided to tell everyone that Tia had gone missing. This story didn't match what the autopsy had found, however, as Tia not only didn't have a broken neck, but she had no visible injuries that would support this version of events. And by this point, police had also viewed the SD card that they'd found inside the home. And from what they had discovered, they knew that Stewart was not telling the truth, and that he had a clear motive to kill Tia. They found that Stewart had searched the internet, even in the days after Tia had supposedly gone missing, for things such as naked girlies, illegal underage incest pics, violent forced rape, and little girls in glasses. Authorities also found hundreds of inappropriate images of girls under the age of 13, including pictures of Tia herself. There were also videos of Stewart pleasuring himself with various objects found around the home. In one of the videos that Stewart had taken of Tia, she had been applying lotion to her legs and was completely unaware that she was being filmed. He had also taken multiple videos of her while she was sleeping. Keep in mind, these were all videos of a young girl that he had brought up since the age of 2 and thought of him as a grandfather. Tia had loved Stewart and had no idea of his evil intentions. Then there was another horrifying image of Tia that was discovered. She was lying naked, posed in a sexual manner, on the bed in her grandmother's home. And there was blood visible on the bedding. It appeared that the photo had been taken sometime after she was killed, on August 3rd. Police additionally found a vibrator in the home that had blood on it, and when it was tested, it was determined to belong to 12-year-old Tia. There was also semen found inside the girl's bedroom, as well as on a pair of shorts that she had previously worn. The thing is, Stewart Hazel had not made a secret of his extensive criminal background, which included 30 convictions stretching back 22 years. These offenses included drug dealing, racially aggravated assault, burglary, and causing grievous bodily harm. Yet Tia had been left alone with him on many occasions. In 2003, just a year after he had become part of the family's life, Stewart had been jailed for close to 3 years due to him being part of a gang that was selling crack and heroin. According to police, him and his friends had caused lots of misery and crime in the area. So this had come after he had broken up with Tia's mother, but prior to him dating Tia's grandmother. So it was something the family must have known about. There was also a time in 2009 where Stewart, who had been a regular at the nearby Randall Tavern, had gotten kicked out following an incident. But then he would return to the tavern a few hours later, carrying a machete with him. Luckily, the owner had locked the doors and called the police before Stewart was able to harm anyone. On this occasion, he'd been jailed for 12 months for possessing a weapon in public. And by Tia's grandmother's own confession, Stewart would drink regularly, and it would make him angry and argumentative. He also regularly smoked weed in front of the children in the home. So while he previously hadn't committed any crimes towards kids, Stewart was not the kind of person that you would want around your children, much less watching them on his own. Stewart went to trial in May of 2013, and though he first pleaded not guilty, he would end up changing his plea 5 days into the trial. According to him, it was because Tia's family had, quote, suffered enough. But in reality, he was actually just too scared to deal with the cross-examination of his story, which was clearly a lie. During the trial, the photos that were found on the SD card would be shown to the court. And several people, including Tia's mother, Natalie, would have to leave the room because they were just so upset by these images. In the end, it was determined that Stewart had killed Tia after he'd made sexual advances at her, but when she had tried to resist or threatened to tell someone, he'd ended her life. Stewart would then be jailed for life with a minimum of 38 years, as Tia's family yelled "beast" from the public gallery. Additionally, the neighbor who had said that he had seen Tia leaving the house that day would be sentenced to 5 months behind bars. A private funeral was held for Tia Sharp on September 14, 2012, and she was then cremated. In June of 2013, the house where her horrific death had occurred was demolished.
He just died.
The pathologist said no definitive cause of death can be identified, and James's death has been certified as unknown natural causes. Witkowski still questions exactly what happened the night that James died, and now she's hired her own private forensic pathologist to take a second look. How does a 2-year-old pass away with no explanation?
James Riker Beale was born on October 6, 2017, to his mother, Kara Witkowski, and his father, Thomas Beale, in Palatine, Illinois. James was a sweet little boy who could make anyone smile. He loved playing with his big sister, singing and dancing. James also liked monsters, he loved the song Baby Shark, and he was said to be highly adventurous and curious. James's parents, Kara and Thomas, never got married, but they were together for 5 years. And throughout their relationship, Kara said that Thomas was emotionally and physically abusive towards her. He would tell her she wasn't a good mother, her kids didn't like her, and she was worthless. Things in their relationship got even worse in August of 2018, when Thomas raped and sodomized Kara. A few days after it happened, Kara would confront him, and Thomas ended up apologizing. He then made the excuse that it had happened because he had had so much trauma in his early childhood. He told Kara that his father, Jerry Beale, had sexually abused him, which had caused him depression, dissociative personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder. It was one of his other personalities who had raped her, he said. But Thomas also promised Kara that he would go to therapy. He wanted to get better, so she decided to stay with him. But even with Thomas going to therapy, things in his and Kara's relationship did not improve at all. And in March of 2019, Tom actually raped Kara yet again. After this incident, Kara turned to a PTSD group on social media and made a post about what had happened to her. Well, Tom ended up finding out, and he called her, threatening her life. So Kara decided that enough was enough, and she reported the rape to police. She also started to make a plan to escape from Tom. She was going to take her 2 children and go stay with a friend until she got back on her feet. But Tom found out about that too, and he told Kara that if she left, he would not only kill himself, but also her. Kara knew that she was not going to stay with this horrible man any longer, however. Once Tom realized that Kara was not bluffing, she was not coming back to him, he decided to tell her the truth. The truth was that he had never gone to therapy as he said he had. He also confessed that he had never had dissociative identity disorder or multiple personalities. Also, at one point prior to this, Thomas had said that this alternate personality had made him almost beat a child to death. And the judge who would later preside over their custody case, Judge Dalton, knew about this. So just keep that in mind. Kara asked Tom if the kids were safe with him, to which he told her that he was probably a greater danger to them than he was to her because he loved her more. So Thomas was arrested after Kara reported the rape to police. However, he was never charged, and he ended up being released the very next day. Police said that there was not enough evidence, even though Kara had text messages in which Thomas admitted to what he had done to her. Additionally, Kara was never notified when Thomas was released from jail the day after he was arrested, and he showed up at her house. When he got there, Tom would get up in Kara's face, but luckily, Kara had a friend there, so he wouldn't end up hurting her or the children. But Kara decided that it was time to take out an emergency protection order against her ex. Now, for the past few weeks since their split, Tom had been using Kara's car, because even though it was in her name, she didn't have a driver's license. He did. And when he returned the vehicle back to Kara, she was cleaning it out and found a hard drive that she knew belonged to Tom. And on it, she found thousands of CP images. Tom would later admit that this was his hard drive, and he asked Kara to destroy it for him, which she clearly was not going to do. Instead, Kara notified police as well as Child Protective Services to make them aware of the situation. Around the same time, Kara and Tom's daughter told Kara that her grandfather, whom she and her father lived with, Jerry Beale, had touched her in her private areas, which were also very red and irritated. The little girl also had lots of bruising on her legs and said that her grandfather had hit her. Police would then open an investigation into Jerry Beale. After this, Kara filed an emergency motion to try to get only supervised visits for Thomas. This was in April of 2019, but when it went to court, Judge Dalton wouldn't listen to Kara or look at any of her evidence. And she even had a recording of her daughter saying what her grandfather had done to her. So Kara's petition was denied, and Thomas was given unsupervised visits 4 days a week with both James and his older sister. As far as their grandfather Jerry was concerned, he was just ordered to not have any contact with the children. But as I had said, he lived with Tom, so therefore he lived with the children 4 days a week. But when the judge was told this, he just said that Jerry could go in the other room. The kids are going to be there for days. Jerry's not going to just go into the other room for hours on end. Come on. Nearly 2 weeks after getting more custody time than he should have, Tom decided to further hurt his ex, and he followed up with a petition to restrict her parenting time. This was done behind her back and while she was at work, so Kara never had any chance to defend herself against the claims that Tom had made in order to gain custody. And the court would end up awarding him temporary majority custody, and they outlined supervised visits for Kara. So Tom now had nearly 100% custody of the children, and Kara only had a few supervised visits here and there, even though the children had been hurt while they were in his care. The last time that Kara would see her son James alive was on August 6, 2019, over 2 months prior to his death. And in September of 2019, Kara had been ordered to attend court for contempt for speaking out against a gag order, and she was threatened with prison time for saying that officials had her back up against a wall and had forced her into a 50-50 custody agreement. Kara knew that something was wrong with her children, and she had done everything in her power to try to protect them. Unfortunately, James would end up dying on Halloween night. It was on October 31st, 2019, around 10 p.m., that 911 responded to the 1300 block of East Evergreen Drive in Palatine. James was found in his grandparents' master bedroom, on the bed, lying on his back, and his lips were blue. There was also a small red bubble coming from his nose and red foam coming from his mouth. The little boy was immediately rushed to Northwest Community Hospital in Arlington Heights, but despite resuscitation efforts by paramedics and then hospital personnel, James was pronounced dead. According to James's grandparents, who definitely should not have been watching him given Jerry's history of sexually abusing his father, said that the toddler had been on the bed playing with an electronic device after his father Thomas had left for work. His grandmother had then gone to shower, but when she returned back, she thought that James was just sleeping on the bed. She then noticed that his lips were blue, and she called emergency services. And James's father, Thomas, said that he had left for work around 9:35 p.m., leaving his son in his mother's care. Thomas told police that prior to him leaving that evening, that his son seemed healthy and responsive. He also added that before he left, James felt rather warm, and he was going to take him to the pediatrician in the morning. An autopsy on James's body would end up taking more than 3 months to be completed, and when it came back, it would show that James's cause of death was due to undetermined natural causes. And it had been less than 24 hours after James had died that police ruled out foul play and closed their investigation. The medical examiner was trying to say that James's death was caused by sudden, unexplained death in childhood, which only happens to 1 in every 100,000 children. But the thing is, James's medical records showed that he had been treated multiple times in the past several months for a prolapsed rectum. His autopsy said that it found this did not contribute at all to his death. James's mother, Kara, said that her son had actually been hospitalized 9 times in total for his prolapsed rectum. And when she had sought answers from her ex, Thomas, he just told her that James had been constipated. However, Thomas told doctors that James had no history of constipation. James's mother, Kara, had also been told that during 4 of these appointments, rape kits had been done, but she never saw any results of these. Also, Kara did not know until after her son's death, because no one had informed her, that according to James's medical records, he'd been at high risk of morbidity since August of 2019. This was due to the fact that he had undergone rectal repair surgery, but his rectum would still not go back in. So given this, and the fact that there had been a red bubble coming out of James's nose, as well as red foam coming from his mouth, his mother, Kara, knew that his death was no accident. And she decided to have a second autopsy performed.
He absolutely loved monsters.
The only keepsakes that Kara Witkowski has of 2-year-old James,
I miss being able to hold him,
can fit in a shopping bag.
I have had absolutely no closure in all of this.
Witkowski's ex had custody of James on that night in October when Palatine police got a call for an unconscious 2-year-old in cardiac arrest.
He was laying on his back and his lips were blue.
But by the time Witkowski made it to the hospital, James had passed away.
When you're sitting here telling me that you can't explain to me how my son died, I can't believe that.
More than 3 months passed by with no autopsy results from the Cook County Medical Examiner's office until this week when she got this letter.
He just died.
The pathologist said no definitive cause of death can be identified, and James's death has been certified as unknown natural causes. Witkowski still questions exactly what happened the night that James died, and now she's hired her own private forensic pathologist to take a second look. How does a 2-year-old pass away with no explanation?
This is a category of death that eludes science today.
Laura Gould Crandall leads a national foundation that's trying to answer that question. Crandall says James's case currently falls under the category of sudden, unexplained death in childhood that about 1 in every 100,000 kids falls into. They don't know how to predict it or how to prevent it. Records obtained by the CBS 2 investigators show that since 2014, the Cook County Medical Examiner could find no explanation for the cause and manner of the deaths of 26 children between the ages of 1 and 4. Crandall agrees that these families need more answers.
The examiner who had performed the little boy's autopsy the first time around, John Walsh, was said to not even have the necessary credentials to perform the autopsy. The medical examiner also kept James's heart, brain, and neck organs, even after the autopsy was completed. They said that this was for genetic DNA testing, to see if they could confirm his sudden unexplained death in childhood cause of death. But James's heart and brain were kept for that purpose. There should have been no reason for them to keep his neck organs. Though thanks to the help of a civil attorney, the pathologist that Kara had hired was finally able to obtain these organs, though 8 months later. The findings of the second autopsy were that James Beal's death was caused by trauma to his cervical spinal cord. This had caused his spinal cord to swell, which hindered his ability to breathe and led to brain swelling, then brain death, which resulted in the accidental ruling. It was stated in the autopsy report that more investigation needed to be done to determine the cause of the injuries, and both police and Child Protective Services were made aware of this. Also, the only incidents that could lead to this type of cervical spinal injury would be a car accident, fall, sports injury, or child abuse. A report of suspected child abuse and neglect that had been filed by a physician and the forensic pathologist was determined to be unfounded following an investigation by Child Protective Services. James's mother, Kara, says that she will continue to fight for justice for her son. She will fight until someone is finally held accountable for his death. Police said that during their investigation, they found no evidence of a crime, which is why they had closed the case. They had also used a sexual assault kit on James after his death, but it had come back from the crime lab indicating that there was no other DNA, or so the police said. The police chief also said that if Kara provides them with any new evidence in the future, they'll look further into the matter. Isn't that their job, though, to be looking for evidence, not hers? Following James's death, Kara retained custody of her daughter 4 out of 7 days of the week. However, her father, Thomas, still had her the other 3 days a week. Kara was doing everything she possibly could to gain full custody of her daughter, but I'm not sure what the status of that is. Kara also launched a Change.org campaign calling for the reopening of James's death investigation. Since his death, she has also held multiple peaceful protests in front of the Palatine Police Department. But as of today, there has still been no justice for James Beale. Dennis Vaughn Jr. was born on July 11, 2014 in Laconia, New Hampshire, which is a town near Lake Winnipesaukee in eastern New Hampshire. Dennis's mother was named Danielle Vaughn, and his father is Dennis Vaughn Sr. Having the same name as his dad, Dennis Jr. was often lovingly referred to as Boo instead. He was a silly, smart, and happy little boy who just loved eating pizza and watching Barney the Dinosaur, among other things. Boo also wanted to grow up to be a firefighter one day. He had 2 older siblings and 1 younger sibling. Dennis's mother, Danielle, had a tough upbringing. Her mother was abusive, and when Danielle was only 15, her mother, Sherry Connor, decided that she wanted to up and start a new life without her daughter. So she left her in the care of a 48-year-old man by the name of Dennis Vaughn Sr. and his wife at the time. Given that's Dennis's dad's name, you can tell what happened next. Danielle and Dennis ended up becoming romantically involved. And only 3 years after Danielle was left in his care, she became pregnant. So Danielle was a mother by the time she was 18. Her and Dennis ended up getting married and having 4 children total. Over the years, Dennis Sr. had grown consistently more controlling and abusive, and he and Danielle started using heroin. Dennis Sr. was repeatedly arrested on drug charges, and then in 2016, police raided their home, and all 4 children were removed from Danielle's care, and he was sent to jail. Boo was only 3 when he was removed from his mother's care and placed into foster care, along with his other siblings. But having her children taken from her did not make Danielle sink even lower. In fact, she decided it was time to get her life together. She was determined to get her children who she loved back in her care. Danielle left her violent relationship and then kicked heroin. She also submitted to state-mandated drug tests to make sure that she was clean at all times. Danielle found stable housing on her own, and she then completed multiple mental health counseling programs as well as multiple substance abuse programs. But still, certain obstacles stood in Danielle's way of getting her children back. Unfortunately, there were disputes between Danielle and the children's foster family, as they did not comply to give her her mandated calls and visits with her children. And this was impeding her from gathering all the documents that she needed to prove that she was a fit parent. Now, DCYF, who knew about the situation, did nothing for her. So in 2017, Danielle went to the court and pleaded with them to ensure the cooperation of DCYF. So in response, in June of 2017, the court urged DCYF to place the children in the care of Danielle's mother, Sherry. Yeah, that one. But the court also said that DCYF needed to consistently monitor them while they were living in Sherry's home, as well as do a thorough check on her before they placed the children in her custody. Did they do either? DCYF agreed with the courts and decided to place Boo, along with his 3 siblings, in his grandmother's home. Now, this was only supposed to be until Danielle completed the requirements that were necessary to get the children back, and she'd already completed most of them. So you figure it would be a very temporary situation. Because Danielle was also reluctant to have her children there. She knew how her childhood was, but she had the hopes that her mother would not hurt her own grandkids. So in a preliminary evaluation of Sherry for guardianship, not even the second level of the first level, preliminary, DCYF deemed her unfit. They had received reports that Sherry, associated with known drug dealers, drank alcohol regularly to the point of intoxication, frightened the children, hit Danielle, and one of Boo's siblings even said that Sherry, his grandmother, would play with his penis when she got drunk. Okay, are you hearing all this? These children went into Sherry's care. I kid you not. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. On July 10th, 2017, only 12 days after Sherry had brought the children into her home, she went to the DCYF district office with 3 of the children in tow. She went in there complaining that she was not getting enough money for the children and that DCYF had dropped them off with nothing. Then, only 2 months after Sherry was given guardianship of Boo and his siblings, a report was filed with DCYF by police who had responded to a situation at a campground. Police had been called after several people had witnessed Sherry screaming at the then 4-year-old Boo, grabbing him by his neck and face, and striking him several times. She then dragged him by the arm and threw him into a tent. Crying and screaming was heard by multiple people, which prompted them to call the authorities at that point. 4 days after the campground incident, DCYF assigned a child protective service worker to the case to have it further investigated, and an interview was done in Sherry's home. So even though it seemed they might be doing their job properly, there were several issues with the visit that took place. First, the interviews of the children were done right in front of their grandmother, so they were not allowed to freely speak. And second, they had never contacted the police officer who had responded to the scene when this happened, so they didn't have very much information about the actual situation. The report remained open until March of 2018, over 8 months after it had been opened, and then it was closed and marked as unfounded, which means they found no reason to believe that there was any abuse occurring. Right. In January of 2018, less than 6 months after the campground incident, DCYF filed with the courts to make Sherry the children's legal guardian. And in March of 2018, the courts granted this request and made her the legal guardian of Boo and his siblings. Along with this, it was at Sherry's discretion as to when Danielle would see her children. In April of 2018, Danielle contacted the Laconia Police Department because Sherry was not letting her see her children. And between April 17th and April 30th of 2018, a staggering 6 reports were made. 6 separate reports alleging abuse were filed by reporters throughout the children's elementary school. A school nurse observed on one of Boo's siblings multiple bruises and scratches to his arm, as well as bruising, scratching, and abrasions to his face. He also had a contusion on his head, and due to the severity of the contusion, the school contacted their grandmother and let her know that he would need a medical evaluation in order to return to school, as they feared he might have a concussion. Now, surprisingly, Sherry actually did take Boo's brother to an emergency room, but she made sure the ER was almost an hour away from Laconia, because in Laconia, nurses and doctors had already raised concerns about previous incidents with the children. So despite her best cover-up efforts, this emergency room staff also noticed the red flags. During this hospital visit, many other injuries were documented on the little boy, as well as all the excuses that Sherry tried to give to explain away the injuries. Sherry initially tried going the ignorance route. However, when this didn't work, she said that the injuries were from this little boy playing with his brother, Boo, and getting too rough. And during this ER visit, Sherry even said at one point that the little boy had fallen headfirst into a set of bleachers at school. It was later confirmed that those bleachers don't even exist. At the hospital, 90 photographs were taken documenting the signs of abuse on the little boy. And it was well documented in the registered nurse's report that these injuries were non-accidental. It was clear that the little boy had been beaten, as well as grabbed hard by the face and ears. It was also noted that the bruising on his arms were due to the little boy being confined in handcuffs for hours each day. Now, had DCYF gone to the home after this, they would have noticed that Dennis and his other siblings had similar marks on their bodies. In spite of this, DCYF ignored Danielle's continued pleas for further investigation, and they even had the nerve to tell her there was not enough information to remove her children from the home. Was the report not sent to them? Because if it clearly stated in the registered nurse's report, then what is the issue? How is that not enough documentation? The social worker who was assigned to this case said he would do follow-up visits as well, and those were never done. Now, Danielle continued to visit her children when her mother allowed it, and she noticed bruises on their cheeks, and she knew exactly what they were from, because as a child, her mother had grabbed her by the face and given her the exact same marks that the children had. Danielle also believed that all of her kids looked too skinny. On another visit to her mother's home for Christmas in 2018, Danielle discovered that their living conditions had gone from pretty messy to deplorable. Sherry's home in Laconia was vile. There were human as well as dog feces scattered throughout the place on the floor. She also had locks on the cabinets and refrigerator so that the children had to ask in order to get anything to eat or drink, which she would often not allow. So they were drinking out of the toilet, and when they did that, they were punished for that as well. The kids were also being forced to use buckets as a toilet. After this, Danielle said she called DCYF every single day, but her reports either got screened out or the cases ended up closed as unfounded again. Several of Sherry's neighbors remember hearing bangs, thuds, and screams through the walls, and they all called authorities multiple times. In many of these recorded calls, officers can be heard saying things to the effect of, "We're familiar with that address, but it isn't a concern," or "I was at that address the other day. I didn't follow up." One time, on January 5th, 2019, one of Sherry's neighbors called the Laconia police. She reported yelling and banging coming from Sherry's apartment. She thought that Sherry was probably, quote, beating the crap out of the kids, she told the police. She said it was 11 at night and all she could hear was Sherry screaming and the kids screaming back. The officer that responded to the call just wrote it off as a simple noise complaint after Sherry told him that she was making one of the children run up and down the stairs 10 times after they had urinated on the wall. And after the child confirmed this account, scared of their grandmother, I'm sure, the police officer just told her to be more mindful to neighbors because it was late and left. One day, Danielle received a voicemail from her mother. Sherry had accidentally pocket dialed Danielle and left a long message in which you can hear her screaming obscenities and insults at the children. You can hear her screaming things such as, "I hate you," and "You're a dirty effing dog." Danielle shared this voicemail with the police, And still, nothing was done. It's frankly quite scary how little regard the Laconia Police Department had for these children in this case. Then in July of 2019, Danielle was informed that one of her children had been duct taped to a chair at a campground and left outside overnight and part of the next morning until bystanders intervened. This horrifying event resulted in another case and review from DCYF. However, it was only after Danielle filed an emergency motion to terminate her mother's guardianship rights. And this time, they did kind of the right thing. The child that had been duct taped to the chair overnight was removed from Sherry's home and placed back into Danielle's care. However, the other 3 children were left in Sherry's home. For what reason, I have no idea. They think she's only going to do it to him, and then once he's gone, everything's good. All the other kids have bruises and marks too. Wake up. Instead of removing Boo and his other 2 siblings, they simply put a safety plan in effect, which does absolutely nothing, as we've seen so many times before. When Danielle's son was placed back into her care, he was interviewed by investigators, and he told them that his grandmother had duct taped him to the chair, and she had also hit him and Boo with a belt, and you guessed it, still nothing was done. Terrified for Boo as well as her other children's safety, Danielle started calling for help multiple times every day. She called the Office of the Child Advocate, police, every authority that she could think of. She was absolutely frantic and begging people to take those children away from her mother and literally put them anywhere else but there. Despite the gravity of the situation, as well as all her efforts, the court system would fail Danielle and her family, and she would never see one of her children again. Because following this, Sherry stopped letting Danielle see her children altogether. Months later, on Christmas Eve of 2019, Danielle had gone in early for her cleaning job at Elliott Hospital. She was there for less than an hour when a state police officer came walking in and asked to talk to her. She said she felt a giant knot in her stomach as they walked into an empty room. The officer looked at her and told her that Boo was dead. She was absolutely devastated, but she was also angry that she knew that something was going to happen, and she had tried to ask for help anywhere she could think of, and nothing was done. She tried so hard to get her kids back. The officer told Danielle they weren't sure what happened, but Danielle did. There was only one adult in the house at the time. You do the math. A 911 call had been made around 8 a.m. on the morning of December 24th, 2019, about an unresponsive child at Sherry's 103 Blueberry Lane apartment in Laconia. When the first responders arrived to the scene, Boo was unresponsive. He was then transported to Lakes Regional General Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. Now, it wasn't until May of 2020 that an autopsy was performed on the little boy. And at that time, it was determined that his cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head and neck. It was ruled a homicide. Now, you would think that police would go immediately after Sherry, right? No. From July 2017 up until the day that Boo was murdered, Christmas Eve of 2019, there were at least 27 credible reports that DCYF received from family members, law enforcement, school administrators, teachers, social workers, nurses, a guidance counselor, hospital personnel, and anonymous reporters who had all told them that Boo, along with his siblings, were being abused by Sherry. They had reported that Dennis and his siblings, among other things, had been hit, pushed, kicked, slapped, denied food and water, forced to run up and down the stairs over and over, locked in the basement, tied up with duct tape and handcuffs, forced to use buckets as bathrooms, suffocated, forced to take cold baths, and left outside for hours in the cold wintertime without protective clothing or shoes. Sherry said that she was only interviewed by police for about an hour after her grandson's death. That's it. And from then until the time that the autopsy report came back, she gave so many conflicting stories. But after the autopsy had come back, and it was discovered that his cause of death was blunt force trauma, Sherry started sticking with the story that first responders had actually banged his head into the ambulance on the way out. But did they throw him or slam him into the ambulance? Because bumping his head on it, while it would hurt, would not have killed him, Sherry, okay? These bizarre changing stories, as well as Sherry's suspicious behavior right after his death, went unnoticed by police, just like all the other reports that had gone into them prior. Sherry has not spoken with law enforcement since, and has said that they were mean to her. She has also left the state and gone to live in Maine. She has also said that she was unaware of all the reports that were filed with DCYF against her. And she tried to claim that she was still never given enough food or clothing or money for the children. And more recently, Sherry also has another theory that she's throwing out there. She's saying that Boo had a problem with drinking. Not that kind of drinking. She said that he had been seen at the hospital for concerns of dehydration before. However, this was a year before she was even given the children and 3 years prior to Boo's death. So what does it have anything to do with it? Nothing, right? Nothing. She also said that he would make his pajamas wet before bed so that he could suck the water out of them. Maybe because you denied them water, not because he had a dehydration problem. She has also said that Boo was sick hours prior to his death, but won't give any symptoms. And then she said maybe the mold in my apartment was what did it to him. But everyone else was fine, and mold now causes blunt force trauma? Sherry had also told Danielle at one point that leading up to Boo's death, he had been hallucinating and unable to eat or drink. She said that he knew he was going to die and that the devil was there to take him. As of 2023, Danielle Vaughn, who is desperate to get answers and give her son justice, has filed a lawsuit against the state of New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services, DCYF. She's retained custody of her remaining children and continues to fight for the justice that Dennis Boo Vaughn Jr. rightfully deserves. She says the lawsuit is not what she wanted to do, and she's not doing it for any money. It's only because she could see no other way to push the investigation forward and get this solved.
Danielle's son was killed within days of Harmony Montgomery's alleged murder, but Danielle says no officials are speaking up for her little boy the way they did for Harmony. So she's posted signs like this all over Laconia, determined to hold someone accountable for her child's death. Danielle is leveraging the system before the law says it's too late. She's suing DCYF for damages. She filed in December last year, days before the statute of limitations ran out. 75 pages of heartache and frustration, 27 reports to DCYF starting in 2017, most from professional reporters, teachers, nurses, police, culminating in the final months of Boo's life, with a flurry of calls from Danielle to DCYF, begging the agency to take action to protect her children.
Here these people are saying that you're not fit enough to take care of your kids, and we're going to take them from you, but we're going to protect them, and we're going to do what you should have done.
The Attorney General's office and police have never publicly identified a suspect, but Danielle's lawsuit states the emergency motion filed by DCYF on the day Boo died refers to Sherry Connor as the primary suspect. In response, the state does not refute it. Sherry Connor lives out of state now. Our calls and Facebook messages were not returned. Danielle was awarded full custody of her surviving sons and daughter in 2020, but says she will not rest until she gets justice for Boo.
Danielle's lawsuit alleges that DCYF violated investigative protocols, as well as did not tell her about the abuse and neglect that had been reported by others. They also had failed to do home visits and neglected to follow up thoroughly. No arrests have been made, and there's no other information from the Attorney General's office other than it's open and being worked on. Of course, in the lawsuit, the state denies that it or any of its employees failed to do their jobs properly. When Laconia Police Chief Matthew Canfield, whose department responded to the 911 call that day, made a public statement, he said that they have not forgotten about or don't care about the case. It's actually on his mind every day, and he is also frustrated by the lack of movement on the case. He claims, however, that the police's hands are tied as the Attorney General has it in his hands right now. However, his department never announced Dennis's homicide on Twitter, and their Twitter feed includes many other crimes, including the search for Harmony Montgomery. But no Boo, no Dennis. Nor do the department's social media feeds include the May 2020 press release from the Attorney General's office in regards to Dennis's autopsy, with the name and phone number of the state police trooper taking tips. Michael Garrity, who was a spokesperson for the Attorney General's office, said there has been significant work put into the investigation, but would not give any details. He also would not say why, in the absence of an arrest, they have not sought the public's help since 2020. Dennis Boo Vaughn was cremated, and his mother, along with many others, including a Facebook group called Justice for Dennis Boo Vaughn, are dedicated to making sure that justice is served for the little boy.
Attorneys for Tracy Nix say she is devastated by the loss of her grandchildren.
You always hear people getting struck by lightning twice, people that win the lottery even twice. I mean, here you have the lottery of tragedy, and, it's hit twice. I mean, it's one of the most unfortunate things I've ever heard of, and our heart absolutely, goes out to that family.
Ezra Franklin Schock was born on August 13, 2020, in Sebring, Florida, to his parents, Drew and Kayla Schock. He had the best smile and was a sweet little boy who loved his parents and his big brother Asher immensely. His younger sister Uriel, or Yuri for short, Jane Schock, who shared the same parents, would be born 2 years later on March 5, 2022. The children's parents, Kayla and Drew, both grew up in Wauchula, Florida, and had been friends in high school. They had then reconnected 5 years after graduating and soon decided to get married and have children. A few months before Uriel was born, on December 22, 2021, Kayla's mother, 64-year-old Tracy Nix, and her husband, Nunne Nix, were babysitting 1-year-old Ezra. But that same afternoon, the boy's father, Drew, would receive a phone call from Kayla's father, saying that something had happened to Ezra. Upon hearing this, Drew called Kayla immediately, and she jumped in her car to rush over to her parents' house. On her way there, Kayla was in such a panic that she failed to see a stop sign because she was too busy looking at the medical helicopter that was overhead. This caused her to get into a head-on collision with another car, and she was 6 months pregnant with Uriel at the time. Luckily, Kayla and her unborn baby were not seriously injured, and she was able to get out of the car and continue running to her parents' house. 16-month-old Ezra would need to be airlifted to a nearby hospital, where he remained in a coma until the following day, December 23, 2021. And at that point, he passed away. Come to find out, while Kayla's father, Nay, had been out running some errands, her mother, Tracy, was the one responsible for watching Ezra. Or she was supposed to be watching Ezra, that is. But instead, the grandmother had fallen asleep on the couch, and the 16-month-old was able to open the door and wander outside. He was able to get underneath a fence and over to a retention pond that was a few hundred feet away from Tracy's home. This was a pond that the little boy was familiar with too, because he had fed ducks here a number of times with his grandfather in the past. But sadly, with no one there to supervise him this time, Ezra drowned. Since Kayla was pregnant with Uriel, her doctors wanted to make sure that the unborn baby stayed unharmed. So, they suggested the detectives withhold any information in regards to Ezra's death that may cause her to get seriously worked up or emotionally distressed. Even though authorities attempted to press charges against Tracy in regards to Ezra's death, This wouldn't prove possible because a Florida court would state that a one-time lapse in judgment would not establish culpable negligence on her part. So according to Ezra's mother, Kayla, she was not aware that police had even attempted to try to bring charges against her mother, Tracy. She would not be made aware of that, or, due to her doctor's orders, all of the facts surrounding Ezra's death, until much later on, when another tragedy had occurred. So in the meantime, of course, Kayla did not believe that her mother would ever intentionally hurt her child, never mind kill them. And since charges were never filed against Tracy, Kayla was led to believe that Ezra's death was just a terrible accident. So she was willing to give her mother another chance. But at the same time, Kayla and Drew did not exactly trust her to watch their oldest son or their baby Uriel, who would be making her way into the world soon. After Uriel's birth, the very small amount of time that Tracy did see her and her older brother was almost always supervised. Then on November 1st, 2022, almost 11 months after Ezra's death, Kayla reached out to her mother, Tracy, and asked if she could watch 7-month-old Uriel while she went to her hair appointment that afternoon. It was only going to be for a little while, maybe 4 or 5 hours max. Tracy agreed and told her daughter that she was going to lunch with a few friends and she would just bring Uriel with her. These were people that Kayla had known for years, so she trusted them. The restaurant was also only a few minutes down the road from where she was getting her hair done, so she felt comfortable leaving her daughter in her mother's care. But within only a few hours of her dropping Uriel off with Tracy, someone from the Hardy County Sheriff's Department showed up at Kayla's door. When she answered, the officer told her, "Your baby is dead." Kayla replied asking, "I'm sorry, what? I know Ezra's dead. Why are you here? Like, what is this?" But the officer wasn't talking about Ezra. He was talking about Uriel. After Tracy had finished lunch with Uriel and her friends at Beef O'Brady's, she had driven herself and her granddaughter back to her home in her Lexus SUV. It was about a 7-minute drive, and on the way there, Tracy gave the baby girl a bottle, which caused her to fall asleep. When they arrived back at the grandmother's home, Tracy remembered looking in the rearview mirror and seeing nothing, so she got out of the vehicle, leaving Uriel behind. Once inside, Tracy took care of her dog and then played the piano for a long time. The grandmother didn't even remember that Uriel was still in her SUV when she later got back into the vehicle and took it and drove it from the front yard to the barn in the backyard. There, she would speak with her husband for a few minutes while she waited for her other daughter, Rebecca, and her grandson to arrive. That's when Tracy finally remembered her granddaughter, and she asked her husband, Nay, "When did Kayla pick up Uriel?" To which he told her, "I don't know, I've been outside the whole time." Tracy began to panic, and she flung the car door open. Sitting there, still restrained in her car seat, was 7-month-old Uriel. She was visibly deceased. Uriel's grandfather, Nay, immediately took the baby out of her car seat and placed her on the ground, then began administering CPR. But it was already much too late. Uriel wasn't moving or breathing. She was gone. Her onesie was completely soaked in sweat, and rigor mortis had already begun to set in. The temperatures outside that day had reached 90 degrees, meaning that inside the car, with its rolled up windows, it had gotten even hotter. Tracy's other daughter, Rebecca, had arrived at the home with her son at this point, and she called 911. During the call, she can be heard asking her mother, Tracy, how long Uriel had been left in the car, and Tracy said, "A while."
911, where is your emergency? 1478 Caven Road. What's happening at 1478 Caven Road? I'm with my niece on the clock. I don't know. I just pulled up, but we need EMS, like, immediately. Please. All right. Your niece was left in the car? Is she breathing? I don't know what happened. I have no idea. I can't even fathom this right now. My nephew says, can you get to her so we can answer some questions? No, I don't know what's going on. I can't. My mom I can't. I literally can't. I have no idea. Talk to your dad if he's with your niece. My dad, it has her right now. My dad has her. Oh Lord, How old is your niece? Oh my God. This is really, really, really bad. Oh no. Oh, ma'am. Oh, yep. My name is Rebecca Tucker. My parents are named Tracy Nick. Okay. Ma'am, how old is your niece? I don't know. She's only a couple months old. Okay. I need you to be with her because I need to know if she's breathing, and I need to know now. It doesn't seem like it. Okay, so it doesn't seem like she's breathing. No. Do you know how long she was left in the vehicle? I have no idea. I just pulled up. Please. Okay, I have help on the way, but I'm gonna stay on the phone with you while you're there. Oh Lord. Okay. I have my 12-year-old son. Okay, how old is your niece? Is it gonna be the baby? 8 months old. Okay. Okay, please, and I'm gonna take you home. I can't leave you for this. Okay, I understand. This is Kayla's the youngest one? Yes. Okay, I need to talk to somebody because I want to do CPR on her. My dad's doing it right now. Okay, so the CPR is in progress? Are you doing CPR? Oh my God, she's dead. Okay, how does she look? Her eyes are open. She's not moving, no breathing. Eyes are open, not moving, no breathing. My son's home. That's correct. Hey, are you almost done, baby? No. Oh my goodness. This is. Whew, I'm sorry. I keep touching. I can't. Whew. Okay. Whew. Come on, honey. Finish up, please. Let's go. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh Lord. Okay. Okay. I know that you're wanting to leave. Is there any way I can talk to somebody that's there? Is Tracy there? I don't know where she's gone to. I don't know where she is. I don't know. Okay. Does your dad know how to do CPR on an infant? Yes, he does. Dad, you're doing it, right? Yes, he's doing it. Oh my goodness. Okay, I know you just got there. Is there any way that somebody can answer how long she's been like this? Mom! I don't know where she's at. How long was she in the car? A while. She was in the car. Took her to work with you. Okay. All right, ma'am. Okay, so she took her to lunch with her, and then whenever she got back, she was just left in the car? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Shortly after she had discovered her granddaughter's body, Tracy had turned away from the SUV and ran towards the barn. She'd later claimed that she was looking for something, anything, to hurt herself with. Tracy wanted to be gone and said she couldn't bear to face her daughter and her daughter's husband and tell them what had happened. But the grandmother wouldn't end up hurting herself because police would arrive on the scene shortly after. When they arrived, Tracy was heard on police body cam saying, "I don't want to face anybody. I can't face my daughter. I cannot do that."
I'm having deja vu right when I'm pulling up because I'm seeing the exact same scene that I seen when I pulled up with Ezra. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I never in a million years would have thought again.
They told me that my baby was dead.
Did you just go into complete shock? I mean, the pain must have been unbearable.
Absolutely. I absolutely remember
Kayla
fully putting my phone down and screaming to know that ultimately the person that brought me into the world is the person that destroyed his world, my son. That's just unbearable.
The grandmother would then refuse to speak to anybody about the tragedy for the next few days. Eventually, her husband would end up sending her to a mental health facility so she could come to terms with what had happened. Meanwhile, a medical examiner would determine that Uriel had died from hyperthermia as a result of being left in a vehicle by an adult for several hours with the windows rolled up and the vehicle not running. Her death was ruled a homicide. Uriel's grandmother, Tracy Nix, would be arrested, and she was charged with aggravated manslaughter and leaving a child unattended in a motor vehicle. She made bail shortly after, and once Tracy was back home, she claimed that she didn't want to eat, get out of bed, or really even exist. So she would be sent to a second mental health facility where she would stay for a total of 7 weeks. When Tracy did speak with authorities, she insisted that she had just forgotten about Uriel. Tracy stated that when she had gotten out of her car, she hadn't rushed into her home to do anything specific. She just completely forgot about her granddaughter. Part of the reason that Tracy had forgotten to take Uriel out of her SUV, she claimed, was because when she had picked the baby girl up from her mother's work, Kayla had gone out to the SUV to install the car seat for her. Normally, it would be placed behind the passenger's seat, but since there was a car that was too close on that side, Kayla had instead put it behind the driver's side. But it was only a 10-minute drive from the restaurant back to Tracy's home. And the grandmother had never shown any serious signs of having memory problems that would have contributed to this. In fact, Tracy was a very intelligent woman who had a psychology degree and had worked as a principal and educator for 39 years, where she was highly regarded. So how could 2 children die on her watch? Uriel's mother, Kayla, and father, Drew, were rightfully angry, and they wanted to see Tracy go to prison for what she had done. Because while Kayla had previously believed that Ezra's death was just an accident, she didn't understand how yet another accident could happen less than a year later. At this point, the parents were additionally given the full incident report in regards to Ezra's death. That's when red flags began going off. Tracy had been the primary caregiver for Ezra that day back in December of 2021. According to her husband, Nay, he had left to go to Walmart. And when he did, Ezra was sleeping on the recliner. Tracy was still awake. But Tracy would tell authorities that when her husband left, she had actually been sleeping on the sofa while Ezra slept nearby on the recliner. Though she would later change this story and say that she had been awake when her husband left, and she had only fallen asleep a little while later. When she did, Ezra was still also sleeping at that point. According to Nay, he had also put a heavy door stopper in front of the outside door before he had gone to Walmart, because Ezra knew how to open it and he didn't want him getting out by chance. But Tracy would tell authorities that Ezra couldn't open doors, only the cats could. She also claimed that the doorstop had not been in place, like Nay said. So at some point, while Nay was out at Walmart, Tracy had awoken to find that Ezra was gone. Then she noticed that the garage entryway door was also open. So she got into her car and drove to the end of the driveway looking for her grandson. It was only when Tracy turned around and began heading back towards the house that she noticed Ezra face down in the pond. A neighbor had then been the one to call 911 after they heard the grandmother screaming and saw her performing CPR on Ezra. So why did Tracy and Nay's accounts of the doorstop being there differ? Was Tracy trying to shift the blame onto her husband for Ezra getting outside? She also did originally say that when he had left to go to the store, she had been sleeping. So possibly. Tracy had also taken some prescription medication before Ezra had been left in her care. Medication that lists sedation as a major side effect. Even with these inconsistencies surrounding Ezra's death, his mother Kayla would be told by authorities at this point that unless she believed her mother had physically held her son underwater and intentionally killed him, there was nothing else they could do about his death. In January of 2025, Tracy Nix would go to trial for her charges in relation to Uriel's death. When she did, the defense tried to say that she was not responsible for the baby dying, but rather it was Tracy's prescription medication that was to blame. And Uriel's death was just an isolated incident, which we know is clearly not true because she was also supposed to be responsible for Ezra when he died under her care. His death, however, was not allowed to be brought up at the trial. Which doesn't seem fair, especially since Tracy's lawyer was able to make the statement that Uriel's death was an isolated incident. So at the time of Uriel's death, Tracy had been taking prescription Cymbalta and Ambien. And her attorney claimed that it could have caused the grandmother to be forgetful enough to leave her granddaughter in the car. Tracy was also taking lorazepam for her sleep apnea. And that can cause serious sedative effects, as well as problems with attention and concentration. But if Tracy was so heavily medicated that she could have just easily forgotten her granddaughter in the car, then should she have even been driving directly before that? And if her medication was such an issue, then should she have even been trusted to watch children in the first place? According to Tracy's husband, Nay, he didn't realize that anything was off with her at the time. But now, looking back, he can see that there were some changes in his wife. At the end of the trial, 67-year-old Tracy Nix would be found guilty on her charge of leaving a child unattended in a vehicle longer than 15 minutes, causing great bodily harm. However, the jury found her not guilty of aggravated manslaughter of a child. Prior to Tracy receiving her sentence, Uriel and Ezra's mother, Kayla, would speak, and she would say to Tracy, "I still love you. I hate this. I hate that I have to choose, but you know I had to. But it doesn't change my heart." The mother also said that she would want Ezra and Uriel to know that she and their father, Drew, loved them and that they were so sorry. Because they were the most beautiful children and they were taken by someone that they believed was worthy of their trust. The grandmother spoke as well. Here's what she said.
I think that you have the impression that I have not grieved and that I have not cared about your children. Drew, I particularly picked that up from you, and that could not be farther from the truth. After she was gone, I stayed in bed for what felt like weeks. I didn't eat. I didn't care if I ate. I didn't take care of my physical being. I didn't want to go outside. I would tell Nay over and over, I know that you want to fix something for dinner, but I just don't care. I just don't care. And I was like that a long time until finally I decided I had to do something about it. And the courts were good enough to allow me to go to Blackberry. Blackberry was an alcohol, drug, and trauma center, and I was there for trauma, and I was there 7 weeks. So I spent 2 weeks at Peace River and 7 weeks at Blackberry. It did help because I saw a psychiatrist every day, a psychologist, or a therapist. I saw one of the two of them every day. My fear in just going straight into some sort of counseling was that if I ever opened that box and then didn't see somebody for another week, I would never have been able to handle that. But after 7 weeks of intensive attention and therapy, when I got home, I began therapy every Friday until actually the Friday before trial. So for almost 2 years. Trying to wrap my head around it, trying to, and I want to just go on and make another comment that Drew said, that you hadn't even received an apology from me. You had not received an apology because I wasn't allowed to talk to you. I wasn't allowed to be close to you. But let me tell you something. I would give anything, including my life, if Uriel or Ezra or both of them could be here. And I mean that. I would give my life if they could be here. But that is not how God wanted that to be. And I can't explain it beyond that. But that's not how God wanted it to be. So I've got to figure out how to live. Because I would never hurt your babies on purpose. You've got to know that. You've got to know that. I just would never hurt them on purpose. I loved your babies. With all of my heart, I love your babies. So if I have to apologize, I mean, if I have the opportunity to say I'm sorry is so menial and insignificant. But maybe if I told you that I would literally lay my life down for them, maybe that would make the I'm sorry more meaningful. I would do that if it would bring them back. You've got to know that. I don't know what else to say. I could probably babble on, but the important thing is that you know that I wouldn't hurt your babies. I just wouldn't.
Now, even though a psychiatrist who had spoken during the trial said that Tracy was one of the most genuine people he had ever interviewed and was honest and remorseful, that's not exactly what the judge would say about the grandmother prior to her being sentenced. He believed that Tracy was just showing sorrow rather than remorse. He said, "I see her more concerned with her community image than the death of a child. I do not believe she's shown remorse. I believe she's showing sorrow. Sorrow is not the same as remorse." The judge then handed her the maximum possible sentence, which was 5 years in prison.
I was relieved to hear that there was going to be accountability and ownership and a conclusion to this part of this story. One of the things that we have struggled with through this whole case has been the exclusion of my other story, which is my son that drowned in her care. And so for us, this is a win for Yuri. But I have a son named Ezra, and he has not been spoken of. And he died in her care. And I don't have any accountability or any answers for that. And I continue to look for those answers to what happened in that case and why that case was not worthy of prosecution at that time. So we're going to be going back in with the state and having a few more conversations to see. But in this moment, we are relieved. The daughter and me had a very hard time with her being taken, and I ended up stepping aside for that moment. And it isn't something that I would ever call a win for me. It is a win for justice for my daughter. And we are grateful to the jurors that spent their time, to all the experts, to all the police and EMTs and every person that played a hand in this trial. We are truly grateful for your consideration and your time and the energy you guys have spent, as well as you guys from the media. I'm truly grateful for giving my story a voice and giving our kids a chance for the world to see that they were incredibly wanted and loved and valued to us. And we are happy ultimately with what the state provided for us in terms of this case with Ezra, or with Yuri. And I continue to look for a way to address my son Ezra's issue, because it's something I feel worthy of attention.
For it being not guilty, it does sting. I'm thankful though that we did get something. I didn't want to walk out of there and see her walk away like she's been for the past 2 years and just being out and about. I was glad to see that the jury did see our side of it, even though they didn't push for the maximum sentence. It was still, like I said, a form of justice.
Well, and as her daughter, I've struggled the whole time with understanding why there couldn't just be that ownership and what did happen. Like, why did we do this? The destruction that has come from this process is pretty unfathomable as well. You know, my kids are dead, but I've lost a lot more than that.
My son's lost a brother. My son's lost a sister. Absolutely. You know what I mean? We look at it from that perspective, and it's, we
advocate for our children.
Yeah.
Tracy's attorney would say that while he considered the aggravated manslaughter charge acquittal a win, he plans on appealing her guilty verdict on the other charge. He stated that he plans on bringing up expert testimony that was not allowed to be used during Tracy's trial. This testimony says that she had been taking a double dose of Ambien on the day that she had been watching Uriel. Though I don't understand how that's going to help her case, because if she was taking double the dose of a prescribed medication, then isn't that her fault? And shouldn't she still be just as responsible, if not more, for her granddaughter's death? Ezra Schock's funeral was held on Tuesday, December 28, 2021, at First Baptist Church in Wauchula, Florida. His little sister's funeral was held less than a year later on November 8, 2022, also at First Baptist Church.